my left wrist says what got you here won't keep you here. And it's kind of like a motto of mine about like how I think that like stagnation is like the public enemy number one, and just kind of never really changing and never having an open mind to what else there is. I think that will really put you in a rut and just keep you stuck in place without being able to move forward and grow as a person.
In your career, have there been moments when you've felt stuck, or is this mantra always kind of been top of mind for you?
Uh, I mean, it's kind of always been there with my like willingness to just like throw myself at any challenge. But more recently, I think that like having to step away from cyclocross, which is something that like is still my favorite type of racing, and transition into more gravel racing. That's been like a bit of a comfort zone push, just because like the demand for these longer races is a lot different than what it takes to be good at a 1 hour full gas race. So yeah.
Why do you think that this shift has happened? Because as you know, cyclocross was super hot from, I don't know, do you want to put years on it? What do you consider the hot years?
For sure when like J-Pal, like when towards the end of Tim Johnson's career, and when Trebone and J-Pal were all racing, Jamie Driscoll, like so back in the like 2010 to 2015 was like pretty hot back during the or not the NCGP, the see, it's so long.
Yeah, I mean, who remembers? But yeah, there was a big national
Right,
series.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was hot. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of early beginning social media, but
right.
yeah, I remember like hitting refresh on Velo News trying to find those stories, right? And I wrote about Trabon back when he was national champion for Mountain Bike magazine when that existed. I went up to
I used to subscribe.
Ventura. Yeah, I went up to Ventura. He showed me his muscle car. I found that interview again recently, and he was talking to me about he would never listen to anything when he trained. He's like, "Yeah, I'll go out on like a 7 hour zone 2 ride and I won't listen to anything."
He
It's like,
still
wow,
he still
wow,
doesn't.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so that's some real willpower. But yeah, so during that era, what were you coming up as a junior, or just getting into the sport?
So as a junior, I started basically with all my focus on the mountain bike. So I did a lot of stuff with the U.S. national mountain bike team. It wasn't until like 2013 or 12 maybe I did my first cross race when I was in college at Lees McRae College, and I went to Bend Nationals. So I don't know if that's exactly the year, but whatever year nationals were in Bend, and that was kind of when like I was like, this is really fun. I'm pretty good at this, and then I tried to do it more moving forward from there.
Because we're talking about cyclocross, I'm just going to go there, man. When you got jammed up in the tape, right? And for, this podcast, we talk about cycling a lot. I've had a lot of cycling personalities on recently. My listenership are not all core cyclists. Could you give a little bit of a setup about what happened in that moment? Because man, I was cheering for you. I wanted that so bad for you. I felt like that was your day, man. What happened?
Yeah, so I think that was the end of lap one. Um, it was nationals in Tacoma, Washington, 2018 or 19. And so Gage Hecht was leading. I was second, and then Curtis and Steven were just gapped a bit. And so we came in right before the finish straight. There was this like kind of, it was slightly off camber drop down to like the flat of like the main course. And as Gage dropped down, there was a big G out at the bottom. And the dude was like, he was nuking. And I think like just compressed, we're running low pressure. And I think in that G out, he compressed tires and got sent off the course into the tape, and he went through the tape. It was like it was like taped 2 rows high. And so he went through it and was just pulling tape with him. And then instead of stopping and like getting back on, he just hooked a left through the tape again and pulled it out. And I was right with him. And when I hit that G out, it was like there was no time to stop. And so as he pulled the tape out in front of me, it was just like a head tube clothesline, and that was that.
It was like a Looney Tunes cartoon. It was, I mean, watching it, I just had this visceral, like, no reaction. In that moment, it happened so fast. Did you think you were going to just break through it like Rocky? What did you think would happen?
I hoped so, but so then, funny enough, so like after the race, we went to a brewery where the guys, I think the MFG crew was helping set up that course, and they told me specifically that there was one guy, I don't remember who it was, but the guy I was talking to was like, hey man, the person you might want to be really mad at is this other person, because just before the race they put the order in for the course tape, and the option was to go 0.2 mil or 0.3 mil, and they went with the thicker one. So I thought I would break through it, but yeah, no go.
And what ended up happening for people who didn't see the race?
In the whole race or just then?
No, just then.
Yeah,
Let's go
well,
with that moment.
it was basically, like I said, it was like a head tube clothesline, and it kind of just like eventually I hit this point where I just went over the bars and ended up on my ass, and I don't know, like I tried to keep going, but I think it took some wind out of my sails.
What was the impact on your motivation at that point in time? Did you feel like you could close the gap and win the race still? Because up until that moment, I thought I was 100% sure you were going to win the race. I'm sure you were too.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely looking forward to the rest of the race. I was feeling good, and like the course, I really liked the course. It was like proper technical for me. It was pretty mountain bikey because it was all like on a hillside, so it had like a bunch of steep chutes and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I got back up and tried. I think by that time, Curtis and Steven had just passed me, and I think I like put a big dig in to try to get up on their wheel. I don't know that I was able to, and then I was just kind of hanging out in fourth all day. So that's where I ended up.
And what's happened to the sport since then?
Answering this makes it seem like that moment was the pivotal moment in cyclocross.
This was the pivotal moment. Yeah, this is the grassy knoll moment in cyclocross. But I mean, it does seem like something happened. Like Nats used to be this huge thing just in cycling cultural generally. I feel like that people really look forward to. Cyclocross had tons of heat. A lot of people were participating in it. Gravel kind of started to rise up, which, as you know, there's the pointy end of the race. There are professional athletes like you, world-class athletes, but it's also something kind of like a 10K where people just show up to complete the race. Mm-hmm. Cyclocross, of course, is not like that.
Right.
You're not just showing up and casually doing a cyclocross race. I mean, I know some people pretend they do that, but I don't know. Can't really do that. So it kind of started to not become a super popular thing to do. But from your point of view as a pro athlete, what happened in the intervening 5 years?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that people, like, for sure the pandemic had a big impact on the sport. And I think that people were looking for something new, and like new bikes were being made for gravel, even though I don't think they were that much different than cross bikes. But I think with the pandemic happening, it like gave people this kind of outlet to just go explore and do bigger rides. And like there's not many people that like to go out there and like throw their head against the wall doing VO2 efforts, which is kind of what you need to do to like be okay at cross. And so I think people just like wrap their head around like riding all day and having fun doing it. And I think it just kind of stuck after the pandemic. And then like that, the gravel races were kind of there already. And then people just jumped in full steam. But it's interesting that you say like you made the 10K comparison, because in my opinion, like I don't feel like many people train for like the pop-up 5Ks and 10Ks that happen, like the drumstick dash, the Thanksgiving, but like
Yeah.
so many people come out for that. And so like when you compare like cross and gravel to a running race, I feel like cross is only an hour. Like I mean, that's for us. It's usually like 40 minutes for, the category races. And so it's like, how can you not want to do that over like some of these races? For some of the category races are like, 8 to 12 hours, depending on depending on the race.
Right. But there's, of course, the spirit of gravel during those 8 to 12 hours, which just carries people forward as if they have wings.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I don't know. I think I was touched by the spirit of gravel at Unbound, and honestly, I think I'm gonna file a harassment complaint, to be honest.
Yeah, what happened there?
Yeah, I was feeling good in a good group, and I made it about 6 hours in with that group, and I don't think I was eating enough. I thought I was. You know, I I was really not looking forward to this race. The only other race, like this was my second least sought after race this year. The first being Leadville, which is next for me. So, but I will say, like, I had some bad vibes going into Unbound, but then coming out of it, I do want to give it another go, just because. Yeah, I mean, like the first time you do an effort like that, you just learn so much from it, and I'd like to try to put together a bit better of a race next time I do it.
Talk to me about the bad vibes. Where were the bad vibes, Kerry? What was going on?
So roughly 120, 110 miles in, I think that the effort caught up with me, so that was like roughly 5 hours in or so, 6 hours in. Yeah, I just was not taking in enough fuel, and we were pushing like, I think I was averaging like 270 or so for that time, which is roughly like 1,000 calories an hour for me at the output, and I wasn't replacing it, and that caught up with me. And then I started to feel the bonk, and instead of like cramming down as much food as I possibly could, in the back of my mind, I was like worried about GI issues. And so I was a little scared, but I just kept holding on to that group for dear life. And so I just like went deeper into the crater until I found the bottom. And then I had to sit on the side of the road for a bit, and I spent like an hour and a half trying to claw my way back out of it.
And for anybody listening, if you do not follow Kerry's YouTube channel, you definitely should. It's one of my favorite cycling YouTube channels. Kerry's one of my favorite cycling YouTubers. We're definitely going to talk about Sherman the dog and why Kerry has abandoned pancakes for cereal here in a bit. But yeah, if you check out the Unbound video, Kerry, you've got some great video. I'm sorry to laugh, man, but yeah, after you imploded, it was not a good scene. It looked like a very dark moment for you.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. Like, the worst was watching Tobin ride past me and just not being able to do anything about it. Because whether or not Tobin will admit it out loud, he's the only person that I care to beat in the Lifetime Series this year. And so watching him ride past me was tough.
Why do you want to beat Tobin so bad?
Why? I mean, why wouldn't you want to beat Tobin? No, we have this big vendetta, and we're both cross racers coming into the gravel scene, so there's like this little bit of a like who's the better rider, and I beat his ass last year at Cross Nats, and now we're all just doing the lifetime as a big build up for single speed cyclocross world championships, which is in his hometown in Santa Cruz. So, yeah, that's the carrot I'm chasing.
Yeah, and since you've announced that that's kind of the apex moment of this feud, I'm gonna go ahead and give a shout out to Josh Tabihe, who's also a resident of Santa Cruz. He's a buddy of Tobin's. Connected me with Tobin to get him on this podcast. But Josh, I want you to know I'm coming to get you. I'm getting back on the cross bike. I'll be there this fall, and you're going down.
That's what we need, more shit talk. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why cross kind of started taking a dip from gravel.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my favorite things about cross. I mean, Josh and I were definitely cross rivals. We know each other from high school. I actually took Josh on his first mountain bike ride in Lawrence, Kansas, which he reminded me of a couple of years ago. And yeah, once we were both living out in California, got into racing cross. And, Josh has spent a lot of time on Fish Tour. So I feel like I really need to beat him every time I race him. And unfortunately, he has beaten me a few times, but he's putting in a lot of time out there at Fort Ord, preparing for these battles, and I'm doing other stuff. So here we are. Yeah. So Kerry, as you think back on the cross years, I mean, you spent a lot of years racing a pretty full program in Europe after your U.S. program. During those years, and I know you're still going over there now, but what was it like to be out there, at the European level of the sport, like at the biggest, best races? And yeah, I mean, you were holding your own. You were doing well. Like you were progressing until gravel kind of came in and forced most U.S. cyclocross racers to move in the direction of becoming gravel pros. But what was that experience like for you, being in the mix over there?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I started racing with the U.S. national mountain bike team as a junior, and my first race overseas was World Championships in Val di Sole in 2008, and I went into that thinking like, I beat a bunch of kids from Colorado to make it onto that team, and so I felt like I was hot shit. And so I went over there thinking like, I'm going to do big things. And I think I got pulled 3 laps down. So I had already kind of been exposed to that really high level of the sport. And I knew what it's like to ride in Europe against those guys. So, after I transitioned out of the mountain bike scene into the cross scene, I was hoping that, like I'd beaten my head against the wall doing mountain bike world cups. And I was hoping that with better success racing in the US that I would come and be able to have better success racing in the cross world cups, which to an extent was true. But it's just the level and depth over there is just, it's crazy. I mean, it's why you don't see many Americans doing well in the World Tour races or any of the big races over there. I think like for me, it was great because it just like when I was younger and trying to like be the best cross. I mean, I'm always trying to be the best racer, but like when you're chasing those UCI dreams, I would always go over there with a blank notebook, and I would just be taking notes about like how these guys are so good, like where they're excelling, where they're better than me, why I think maybe they're better than me. And it was always a big learning experience. And it was always tough because I, like doing the whole US season, we have a lot of travel. And so like starting in September going through December, it was basically like maybe 2-3 weekends off. And so by the time we went over to Europe, the tank was pretty much empty already, and then to go over there and just like kind of basically lose motivation throughout the entire time you're over there, and you get this like carrot put on world championships or whatever the last race is, and you're like, all right, I just got to make it to there. So that was always a little tough for me. Like I kind of wish that I would have gone over there earlier in the season and tried some things when I was like fresher and more motivated. But it was always a great experience because I always came back from those trips with like, you know, it would be a big ass kicking to go over there, but I always came back from those trips with motivation about what to work on for next season.
And when you were over there, did you have specific rivals within where you were finishing in the race where you're like, this is the guy I want to try to beat this week because I'm not going to beat Matthew Vanderpool
Right.
or Wowit or whatever, Tunes Air, whatever the case may be, where you're like, this is a guy whose ass I want to kick to get 16th next week?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a few of those riders. Like Stan Gudry was one of them. Michael Boros was one that I always had my eye on. Vincent Bastons was one because he would always come over here in the US, and like he, it seemed attainable to stick with him and beat him. But then over there in Europe, he just had another gear.
And to go way back, what got you into riding bikes and into racing?
Yeah, so I think I was like 15. Up until this point, I'd only ever really had like Walmart bikes. Basically buy one every year because they would break. And a friend of mine, his parents had real bikes. It was like the first time I'd ever seen trigger shifters and like brakes that worked. And so we went to a state park near my house where I grew up in southeastern PA, French Creek State Park, which is like, I'm pretty sure that's where rocks grow, and they take them out of there for the rest of the world. And yeah, we just basically it felt like riding trials when we first went over there because there's a lot of like rock water bars, uphill technical climbing, and so it felt like we were just flat. We would do a road ride to get over there, and then we would just like flounder around over there for an hour and a half or so, and then ride home. And every time we went, we would like, get the water bar that we didn't get last time or something. And so it was always like fun, and we were progressing at it pretty fast. And then I'd never really even when we were doing that, I didn't know there was racing. And he had told me there's this race coming up. And so I think I had convinced my mom to buy. A friend at her work was selling a specialized rock hopper, and it was like $400, and my mom was like, holy shit, that's expensive. The next bike was $3,200. But yeah, so I got that bike and did this race, and I placed second behind my friend, and it was just kind of like, yeah, the history from there. Like it just pulled me in, and I really liked the challenge of it. And then did it. I think it was maybe 2 years after that, 2.5 years after starting is when I got to go to Worlds. So it was a pretty quick trajectory in terms of like moving up through the levels.
What sports had you done growing up prior to becoming a world-class cyclist in 2.5 years?
Well, I would like to backpedal just because, like I said, I did go over there and get pulled 3 laps down.
But I mean, you're being modest. I mean, just to get on that team and be able to go do that is a pretty remarkable achievement. And you haven't named names, but I'm like, did you like beat Sepp Kuss to get onto that team? Like, who did you beat?
No, it was Rob Squire. Shoot. John. There was a kid named John. John.
Shout out, John. How you doing, man? Shout out to John in Durango.
I remember John had the biggest hands. It looked like he could crush coconuts with his hands. So I don't remember exactly, but it was
He kicked his ass.
it was a bunch
Yeah.
of kids from Colorado came out, like the kids that did well at nationals and stuff that year. But they came out to the East Coast and just it rained the night before, and they just didn't know what they were doing out there. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, before that, what kind of sports were you doing, and what did your family think about you getting into cycling? Was that a normal thing for where you lived, or where I grew up, it was a pretty strange thing for somebody to be doing when I got into it in the late 80s. It was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Similar for me, like no one in my family had ever biked competitively or even like entertained the idea of it. So I had always just played the traditional sports. I was a pretty athletic kid. Basketball was my favorite. I played soccer, baseball, and I ran cross country. So yeah, cycling was not, it took some adjusting, but like just to wrap our heads around what it was like and what it took and how to do it. But my parents were super supportive of it. I mean, like countless mornings when I was, couldn't drive myself. I remember my mom would get like it was always like pulling teeth to get me to print out because this was before smartphones. So like print out the Google directions cue sheet, and then also find the thing on like the TomTom, the desktop or the car GPS unit, and it was always like pulling teeth to get me to do that the night before the race.
Yeah, that's amazing. My parents also were very supportive. My mom drove me all over the state of Missouri to go to places you probably don't want to go to do regional mountain bike races. We took one family vacation to go do there was a Cactus Cup in Illinois at one point.
Okay.
And I was like, that was like the closest national thing that I could go try to do. We turned it into a family vacation, and my older brother Jeff is still mad at me that's I'm sorry, Jeff. But yeah, that's what we did on that vacation. But that's great. So your family was very supportive. And again, for anyone who's followed your videos, it looks like your family's still very involved in your racing today.
Yeah. I mean, my parents make it to a bunch of my races, as many as they can, especially like the cross races that are close to home. They're not as excited to come to these gravel races for obvious reasons. I mean, you just see me like when I leave the place and then come back, and then there's like a 6-hour gap in the middle. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm extremely fortunate to have that that level of family support.
So let's talk a little bit about breakfast. This has come up in previous episodes. I had Cameron Mason on. I dubbed the term porridge core, which is, like the intense oatmeal prep stuff that you see in his YouTube videos. For you, I would say you kind of are a pioneer of pancake core. For years, your fans have been following your pancake prep methods. We've seen you in Belgium, like getting gray market pancakes brought to you, delivered. Recently, you've gone in the direction of cereal, and I'm just wondering if everything's okay, man.
Everything is okay. I think the big thing and the reason I'm not a pancake guy anymore is because these gravel races start so goddamn early that I just cannot be bothered to like cook anything. And I guess I could like make a pancake the night before and then like nuke it in the microwave, but it's not the same. And
not the same, man.
like
not the same.
If you're in a hotel, you gotta have like a hot plate or some way to make a pancake. So in my mind, like how easy is it to pour stuff in a bowl and pour milk over top of it? And I mean, Cinnamon Toast Crunch is pretty tasty.
I'm kind of thinking about your tattoos on your wrists right now when I hear you talking this sad talk, Kerry. Man, I feel like there must have been a moment when there was like a breaking point when you were going deep with your pancake prep and you're like, fuck this, I can't do it anymore. What? Tell me about that moment. I know it happened, man.
Dude, it was probably in Europe, honestly. because
Okay.
for some reason they don't have freaking pancake mix over there. If you go in most grocery stores, they just have like crepe mix. And if you ever messed around with crepe mix, like you make a pancake with crepe mix and it literally is just like a hockey puck of dough or whatever you want to call it. There's no I don't know, like there's no rising agent. And so I had to get creative and like add baking powder and baking soda, but yeah, it's just I don't know. It's a tough situation over there, even the cereal game too, because like I don't know if you've noticed, but America, we know how to make highly refined and processed foods. And Cinnamon Toast Crunch is a great example of that. I recently had some Cine Minis over in Europe, which are the Euro equivalent of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and they're garbage.
Yeah, it's stepped on products. You don't want to get into that.
So, yeah, I think Europe was the one because we were doing so much, like the curse period over there. It's just like racing every other day, and then you're making these like shitty pancakes, and you just get blown out on them.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. That sounds pretty rough. Sounds like you've kind of given up on life.
Well, I've adapted.
That's great. And so now you're in the cereal game. I want to go way back again, though. What was the first job that you had?
I worked as a landscaper over the summer in high school for 2 years, and then it was my dad's friend's company, and he was great, like great boss, but landscaping is hard, and in the summer it's hot, and so like I made it work the first summer, and it was fine money, and then like I tried to do it the second summer, but I was getting more serious about cycling, and I specifically remember this ride. This was a pivotal moment in my life. I went out for this ride, and I had a coach, and I had some VO2 work to do, and I had just like spent the day spreading mulch or whatever. I was just gassed before the ride even started, and so I went out on this ride and I tried to do this VO2 workout, and I might have gotten like 2 intervals in, and it just like it was not going. Like nothing was feeling good, and so I was like, I need to quit. Like I can't do this job anymore. And so that's what I did. I quit and I went like full gas into like the commitment mode of what it was going to take to be a cyclist. And again, like luckily I had the support of my family, and I had like a bit of money saved up to do that. But yeah, that was probably one of the best decisions of my life.
Um, what other combinations of things have you had to do to be able to do what you do? Because again, if someone's listening to this, they don't follow professional cycling, or they just see your cool videos and what you're doing on Instagram. This isn't like a real linear, clear career path, except for a handful of people who are very highly compensated. The like 10 guys, 5 guys making 5 to 6 million euros a year over in the world tour. For everybody else, it's kind of like a bit of a MacGyver job. So what does it look like for you to put things together?
I think that's especially so for American cyclocross, or not cyclocross, American cycling.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just, it's a bigger deal over in Europe. It's more recognized. It's not so much of a niche sport over here. It's like there's not as many outside of the bike industry corporations willing to sponsor the sport. And so with that said, like everybody looks for the bike industry for sponsorship and to tap into that. But as cycling is more or less a niche sport over here, there's not a ton of money in this cycling industry to like get everybody that should have a ride. And so the first kind of thing that I did was when I was still racing mountain bikes, I raced for BMC, was a big sponsor of a team. They wanted to get into the U.S. market, so they sponsored this team with me, Steven Ettinger, Chloe Woodruff, and Erica Zavetta. And that was fun. And then that transitioned into a BMC development team, and I was actually the manager of that. So then we got it was myself, Shayna Paulus, Sepp Kuss, and Emily was actually on that team. So I mean, depending on how you look at it, like I was kind of the person that catapulted Sepp in the trajectory that into where he is now.
What advice did you have for him as a manager?
I taught him how to make pancakes. That was one thing. I remember specifically there was a morning in Vermont when we were getting ready for the Catamount UCI race, and the dude was like a human garbage can in terms of what he would eat. Like, I've never seen somebody eat so much fast food and just be an absolute shredder. And so we went to the grocery store, and I think like he bought bacon. So he was making bacon, and then he made this pan of bacon, and he didn't drain the grease out of it. And I feel like I remember there was like a half inch of grease in the bottom of this pan. And then he just started pouring batter into it and eggs, and he just like used it all. So yeah, I don't know that I taught him a whole lot of, useful things, but I taught him a lot of things.
And where did he pick up that diet? Was that something that John Tomac taught him down on the ranch in Durango, or like, what do you think was going on?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, fast food does taste pretty good, so it's easily accessible. Maybe he's just a man of convenience.
Yeah, could have been. And at that point in time, could you tell that he was just head and shoulders, not the Procter and Gamble shampoo product that keeps dandruff off your body, but could you tell that he was a step above other people from that generation?
Yeah, for sure. Like the dude was an insane. I mean, like he could ride a bike well, but the thing that really set him apart was just like his ability to like he was just an animal up most climbs. Like he could just that's when he shined on the ski slope resort races. He was always a super big threat. And I think he did the right thing by kind of like I think Sepp still to this day will tell you like he loves riding his mountain bike. But I think he did the right move where he saw an opportunity to kind of branch out and do some racing on the road with Optum or Rally at the time, and
Right.
that was kind of like what really launched him into the road scene.
Did you ever think about, I mean, I know you've done some road racing, and I believe even during the pandemic, you were on a road racing team, right? Were you on Project Echelon?
For in 2021, yeah, I rode with them for the season.
Yeah. Did you consider going deeper into road when you were a younger, more impressionable person?
No.
Great. Why not?
I mean, it just was not fun to me. I don't know. Just I had a lot more fun. It wasn't not fun. I just had a lot more fun racing off road, and the vibe just like jammed with my whole ethos of things just way better than the like calorie counting, stepping on a scale, like all this like super anal over analytical stuff that was like kind of the boxes you needed to check back in the day to be a road racer, and I just didn't like that.
Yeah, I don't know why this is popping into my head right now, but I did the Pisgah stage race 2 years in a row. You and I did stand in the food line together one night. And during the Cradle of Forestry stage one year, I stayed in your group all the way to that first. It's where the dirt road ends, and then you turn and like go through the gate onto the single track. So I've stuck with you. I've hung with you, man. We've been down together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, we're tight. But I'm thinking about that was a very uncomfortable experience for me. Maybe that's why I'm thinking about that. But during your Project Echelon days, is that also when you briefly were an e-racer, Kerry?
Oh, it's it's interesting you say that. Well, like I did race 2 e-races, but I felt like I had to because of Project Echelon. They were like had some sort of partnership going with like RGT at the time,
Yeah.
and I did the Joe Martin stage race, stage race, and I think I did like one other practice race or something, but that was just not for me. I don't know if everybody was watt doping and like or weight doping and like saying they weighed less than they did, but I was honest. I stepped on the scale before the race, put my weight in, and like I feel like I'm pretty strong, like I can keep up, especially off the line for at least 10 minutes, anywhere, no matter what the race is. And it was not the case in the e-world.
Yeah, it looked challenging. I don't know if you're in the spot right now where the basement is, where that went down.
It's not. I'm
you?
not in it.
You're not. Okay.
This is
Okay,
there's way too much light and color up here. It'd be much darker down there.
Yeah. Are you in the same house though? That's my question.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you? Okay. So that's probably a place when you go there, a dark memory comes back about what happened during that race. Because it looked, I've done some e-racing, not at your level, but wow, you look like you were going into a part of your mind you didn't want to visit.
And I got dropped.
Yeah.
Quickly. So I haven't ridden the trainer much since then.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Can you say a bit about the area where you're based?
Yeah, so I'm in Roanoke, Virginia right now. Technically I'm in Vinton, but that's just like the next town over.
Yeah. And what's the riding like there? Just based on some of the things that you've shared through your YouTube, you've done a couple of FKTs down there, I believe, but the riding looks fantastic. I'd never heard of the cycling in that area. Just displaying more of my ignorance here. But
no, so Roanoke is a IMBA silver level ride destination for mountain biking. We have Mill Mountain, which has roughly 14 miles or something of trail. I don't know if that's correct, but then right out.
It is now. It's correct now because you've said it.
Yeah. And then you can do a 14-mile loop for sure. And then there's Carvin's Cove, which is a much more well-known mountain biking destination. And then we have peppered kind of in the back country a bunch of really good stuff. And then the Blue Ridge Parkway runs 3 miles from my front door. So, that's a 469-mile scenic parkway that runs basically like from Harrisonburg, Virginia, all the way down to Cherokee, North Carolina. So lots of we don't have huge mountains here like the Rockies, but we have a lot of just ridges as far as you can see. So a lot of 1,000-foot climb kind of things. And then just we're surrounded by the George Washington and Jefferson National Forest. So there's tons of Forest Service and gravel roads all around us as well. So it's a great playground for biking of all disciplines, really. I think the only thing we don't have is a track near us.
And with mountain biking, did you ever consider just going deep in that XCO direction? Did you feel like you had a bit of that Nino Schurter inside of you?
I did, for sure. And I did that for quite a while, until I was maybe 24, 23. But then that was like right around the time when the UCI was like really starting to televise events, and all of the race courses got so lame because they had to keep them at like 5K distances, and so that meant like you couldn't do the fun trails, and like a lot of these races were just like put in a park, basically like a cross race. Like one park that I will never go back to probably is Benelli in California, because that was like the most garbage race course ever. And I just remember like to make it technical, they had to like put some janky ass like hand built rock garden in with like railroad ties, and like it just wasn't fun. And so eventually like doing years of that kind of wore on me, and that's when like I tried to do some cyclocross, and then like I found some success in it, and it was just more fun, and it was easy to make that switch for me.
Do you feel pressure to wear flat brim hats?
No.
Yeah. Do you, I mean, you don't think that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to kind of see you ease into more of like a flat brim kind of style in the pits?
Dude, do you see this?
Yeah.
I can't hide this from the world.
Yeah. You've got great flow.
Thank you.
If you're listening, Kerry's kind of flexing with his hair game right now. Great work.
Way better than Tobin's hair game. I don't know if you've seen that recently.
I haven't. He talked, well, I think when I interviewed him, he was talking about how Keegan had used some kind of mind control to convince him that bleaching his hair was giving him more watts. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, that, and it's just, yeah, it looks like he's got like a mop on top of his head. Like he's in man bun status.
Okay. Very well. Let's jump to Mid-South.
The race was it was only 100 miles. I think we did it in 4.5 hours. It was relatively flat, so like once the front group of like 10 or 15 got established, then it was just kind of being safe and smart and being in the right place at the right time and not working too hard. And I think it eventually whittled down to like a group of 10 or so coming into the last 10 miles. And right there at at like mile 91 or something of 100, there was like a 1 mile single track section. And just based on how the other guys in the group are riding some of the corners out on the course, I really wanted to be towards the front of that group. And I saw, Payson made a big push to get in there in the front. And then I knew that was going to be a move, because I knew he was going to push, and I knew that Payson had some of the better handling in the group. So I just got to the front with him, and we pushed through the single track and got a gap and came out of it, and just that was the move. So it was Payson, myself, and John Borselman that came out of the single track together, and then we pushed for maybe the next 20-30 minutes, but we weren't getting away from each other, and came into town together. And that's where I kind of fucked everything up. I didn't pre-ride the finish, and so coming into the finish straight, I just didn't really know what was happening. I was leading when I shouldn't have been, and Payson wound up at the base of like the last kind of climb, maybe 500 meters out, and just put in a huge move up over it. Caught me by surprise and ended up winning the race.
So for you, when something like that happens, does that stick with you, or do you let it kind of slide off?
I mean, yeah, like, I was still happy with that, because it was kind of like I didn't know where I was going to be coming into the start of the season, and so like getting third at that race was a positive thing for me.
Let me make you feel bad about it.
Well, no, you don't have to, because I already did. Like I had to go back through the GoPro footage and watch Payson like dangle 20 feet off my wheel while I'm just up there pedaling. and then by the time I looked back, he was already ripping past me. So, yeah, you don't have to make me feel bad. I already knew. It's all just part of the thing. Like you're not gonna nail every single race, and like I said, like again with this mantra here, like everything that happens, like you can learn and grow from it. So I've been pre-writing the finishes, moving forward, or since then.
What's been your favorite race that you've done of all time?
Of all time, that's a that's a tricky one. Because like you can separate a race by it was good because you had a really good result, or you could separate a race by like it was just a really cool vibe, a really cool race. Man, immediately off the top of my head, like BC bike race is hard to beat. I did that twice, and it's just, yeah, like the trails that we rode when I did it were just awesome. And not having ever ridden those trails before, or really much at all in the Pacific Northwest, it was really, really fun to go race on them. I love like going to a new spot and riding trails blind or racing them blind. I think that's really fun. So that, yeah, that one's up there a lot.
How do you feel about the Lifetime Grand Prix, and what would you like to see them do potentially new or different with the series?
I'd like to see them put a mountain bike race in it. Otherwise, I think they're doing a pretty good job. I think it's interesting because if you asked a road or gravel guy, they would probably say like there's too much mountain biking in it. But like in reality, like I mean, Jeff Kabush did Sea Otter on his gravel bike. While that is a mountain bike race, I wouldn't say that those are like technical mountain bike trails. I just like to see like a proper mountain bike race get put into the lineup, especially since they call them like the series like an off-road series. But I think they do a really good job with promoting the series, the athletes in it. The like docu series they made last year about the Lifetime Grand Prix is awesome, and like I think we need more stuff like that to get more people stoked on bikes in the US. It's cool because I mean, like I've heard mostly people in cycling still, but like not in it at a high level of racing, just in it because they like to ride their bikes, you know. They watched it and just they thought it was great. They thought it was cool, and I think the more of that we could have, the better. You know, like I think e-bikes have certainly helped put more people on bikes, but I think just yeah, we need like unfortunately like the influencers in the sport just like it's all just like feeding the same market, and like there has to be this way to like branch out into more of the people that aren't familiar with cycling. And I think things like that docu series, and like I've heard a lot actually about like people watching the Unchained documentary on Netflix, and just getting really amped up about the tour about to start. So like more stuff like that I think is great, and I think we'll see more like over the years. I think there'll be more and more juniors and even older people getting into the sport for recreation.
You know, Kerry, I co-host another podcast called Beyond the Peloton that's totally focused on pro road racing. And we, of course, are doing an Unchained recap series like everyone else. I want to get a couple of people who have done Unchained recap podcasts together to do podcasts about our Unchained podcast. It's like, I just want to keep stacking layers of people talking about other people making content. I want to go as high as I can until I have a pyramid that touches the sky. When you think, When you think about what you're doing with your content, because you've been at it a while, you just talked about these influencers shaping the sport and potentially getting more people into it. How do you think about what you've done with your 360 cam and Sherman the dog?
Yeah, I think like I tried to blend like a pretty good mix of like off the bike stuff with like what it takes to be at the front of the race kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, I think a lot of my channel is just trying to show people that like you can cycle at a really high level without sacrificing fun, and it's not as it, it's not as hard as a lot of people make it out to seem. I mean, like obviously the training is tough and the lifestyle can be tough, but like there are some fun, easy things you can do. And then also another thing I like to do is just like have fun on my bike and go on adventures that don't necessarily like aren't race related. My hope is that like inspiring somebody to like, I don't know, like riding my e-bike with my mountain bike attached to the back of it is just like a weird thing to do that would like maybe spark some sort of weird idea in somebody else's head, um, or like doing the FKT stuff like in your area. Just I think like if you can get somebody to do that kind of stuff and get out of their comfort zone, then they might have some fun and inspire other people to do it.
Recently, you made a series of videos. It seemed like you've been traveling quite a bit. You were in Austria doing some work for bike flights, I think. And I got the vibe you almost were like in content jail. Like you felt a bit like under it, right? Like you were out on your balcony. I think you did like 3 or 4 race recaps. Do you ever start to feel the weight of like, man, I got to do this stuff? I know it's a really important part of your job, probably, and the value you deliver to sponsors. Does it ever start to weigh on you? And is there anything you want to do to evolve what you're making?
Um, yeah, I don't know. So like that's the one thing that it is tough sometimes, just because I've definitely stepped away from doing like adventure vlogs, just because sometimes it's nice to just go on a bike ride and like have it be for you, not for other people. And so like I think when I was like a few years back, I was a bit more motivated and like the channel was growing a lot, and so I was like trying to get as many videos done as possible. But lately it seems to be like my motivation is only really there for doing the race vlogs and the race recaps. And then yeah, I think that's like the way that I can make it sustainable, is that like I have to have some of these rides where I'm not worried about getting video to do some sort of vlog or whatever. Like it's just nice to go do a bike ride and have it be for me and focus on the things that I care about or don't care about. And then just like with the Lifetime series, it's easy because it's like I target those races, and I don't really I have some other races on the schedule, but I'm just kind of trying to like not spread myself too thin, basically.
Yeah, it is interesting with the Lifetime races. People seem to have a bottomless appetite
Yeah.
for content related to those events. I mean, I've noticed it with this podcast as well. It's just like, wow. I mean, Unbound in particular, I think you could make 500 videos about it and people would consume all of them. But and with the Lifetime series, did you apply to be in it in the inaugural season?
I did. I got snubbed.
How did that feel?
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I was pissed they didn't accept me, but like I didn't really want to be in it. Um, but I was pissed because I felt like I deserved a spot based on the other people that were there and the criteria that they were choosing people with. I think that in my resume, I did not um, include enough gravel race results or like mountain bike race results, but everything fresh in my head was mostly cyclocross, and so that's what I talked about mostly. And I'd never done a lifetime event that year or up to that year. So maybe there was some bias there, but yeah, there is a bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I do want to do well this year, and I am focusing on it because I just want to put a big middle finger up at the end of the year and just like, you should have accepted me year one.
Yeah. And here you are now. You've talked a little bit about some of the races that are the most important going forward and how important it is, of course, to beat Tobin. Are there any races that you get nervous for when you get on the line? Because at least on camera, you seem pretty relaxed leading up to events. Does anything actually make you stressed out or nervous when you race?
Um, Man, honestly, not really. Like, especially getting into these gravel races, like, it's been kind of nice because like you do all this, it takes so much work ahead of time, and so like I really have been really, me and my coach, I work with Chris McGovern, we've been like hitting the training really hard, and so like it's nice for me because it takes like, I'm doing everything I can do. I'm crossing the T's and dotting the I's as I should, and so like you get in these big gravel races, and it's like you don't have to be super nervous about the start. You just have to be positioned well for when the moves are there, or like when a certain section comes. So it's not as stressful as cross, where like everything happens so quick and like you only have an hour to make the most of it. So I think like all of those past experiences and dealing with like the high stress race situations have like helped me come into this part of my racing career and not really be that nervous about racing.
There does seem to be a rather high level of mean girl style shit talking that goes on social media among people at the very tip of the spear in pro gravel racing. Is anybody actually saying anything directly when you all are together and racing? Like, I hear people chirping on podcasts, on Twitter, you see the Instagram posts. And, you know, in my experience, if people were saying those kinds of things, there might be words in real life. Does anything ever happen?
I'm sure a couple fuck yous get thrown. Well, I mean, I know they do around when like dudes are being dicks and not pulling through, but um I think that it's mostly just like, I think everybody's like too afraid to actually start shit in a bike race. You know, they just like wait until they can get on social media and then like kind of like make a bunch of backhanded comments about so and so.
Yeah. But not you. You don't do that, Kerry. You're a class act. Well, Kerry, thanks for being here today. Thanks for sharing your time with us. We didn't get to talk about your dog, Sherman. I hope Sherman's doing well. Shout out to Sherman.
He's sleeping around here somewhere.
Yeah, perfect, as it should be. But yeah, good luck with the rest of the series, and thanks for making time. I appreciate it.